We understand that the last reading of the Sun's version of events of the 1882 election day was a tad rough. But it is also important to keep in mind that this was a time of sensationalism where journalism was concerned. We will go over the undisputed and disputed reasons behind the election day fight and try to separate truth from fiction. Also of note, the Sun article was printed in 1888, a full 6 years after the event. So even though there was a conflict everyone would remember, there may have been changes to the stories. Eyewitnesses may now have changed their testimonies, and memories could have faded. The reporter did the best that he could with the evidence that he could find at the time. However, we do step back and wonder how much of what he wrote was testimony from witnesses and how much of it was to sell papers. All aboard the Kentucky Tennessee Living Time Machine. Please fasten your seatbelts and keep your arms and legs inside of the vehicle at all times. But to get going, we need your help. We still need to fire up that time machine to transport us. Please help us by clicking on the like, subscribe, and bell notification buttons down below. Not only does this fire up the time machine for our flight back in time, but it convinces the YouTube algorithm that we need a bigger vehicle to reach more people who love history as much as you do. Now, back to our story. The Undisputed Points. There was an election held on August 5th, 1882, and the candidate for office of Justice of the Peace was Thomas Stafford. We could not find a lot of information about Stafford, but it does seem that what we can find, he did have the support from both the McCoy and the Hatfield families. So far, no one has disputed this. We also know that before this point, there had been raids, kidnappings, and lawsuits that caused the families to despise each other. But even though the families did not like each other, they have members that did interact and even employed by the other side of the feud. There is no dispute as to the McCoy brothers Tolbert and Farmer being involved in the conflict. There are some sources that disagree that Randolph Jr. was shot and not Bud. Everywhere we have looked, it seems that it was Bud that was at the pawpaw tree and not Randolph Jr. Another point that is undisputed is that all the people involved in the actual quarrel were in fact drunk on moonshine. We will get into the details of this a little later on, but for now we will say that this part of the tale has never changed. One last undisputed fact would be that Ellison Hatfield was stabbed 26 to 27 times and shot once, depending upon the source used. Even though the timing of his death is disputed, the fact that he died of his wounds is not. The first disputed claim. The first disputed claim we will go over is what the fight was about. In our research, we have found places that there was a disputed loan that was at the center of the conflict. Let's take the Sun's version of events first. Talbert lent Elias, Bad Lias, Hatfield $1.75. In today's money, $1.75 would be no big deal and nothing to fight over. It was about the price of a Coca-Cola today, right? But let's look at this in terms of the inflation calculator. According to the CPI inflation calculator, $1.75 in 1882 would be worth $54.10 in October 2024. While in some circles this would not be a lot of money, but if you're not exactly rich and living in the Appalachian Mountains, this was a huge chunk of change. Now, the claim is that Talbert went to Bad Lias for the return of the money so that he could buy some more moonshine. It seems that Bad Lias had failed to return the money when he said that he would. For Bad Lias to deny that any money was owed to Talbert would have been a slap in the face. Your word stood as your guarantee in the mountains, and if you did not keep your word, then you were considered to be a lowly person. For this reason, according to the Sun article, Talbert began his physical fight with Bad Lias. The two men were separated, and Talbert and Bad Lias were arrested. According to the article, Talbert was a big man, and Bad Lias was a small man. For this reason, Ellison was not happy and felt that Talbot was picking on Bad Lias because of his size, and so the fight was not a fair one. Ellison then decided to goad Talbot with a knife, even swinging it close to his body. For the safety of Talbot, who was likely to be stabbed by Ellison, he was released and the two men got into a knife fight. Now, this is very plausible. This was not the first time, nor the last time in history that two men would come to blows over borrowed money. Also, it is plausible that an uncle or other family member would get into a fight to defend their family or a family member, especially if they were drunk on whiskey. The second disputed claim. Now we could see this one running side by side with the first reason for the fight. We can also see this being the sole reason behind the fight as well. Bear in mind that the event of the Election Day conflict took place the very same year that there was trouble between Johnson Hatfield and Rosanna McCoy. One view is that the McCoy brothers were angry about the treatment of their sister Rosanna by the Hatfield family. Johnson Hatfield threw down their sister Rosanna and did marry Rosanna's first cousin Nancy, who was also a McCoy and the daughter of Asa McCoy. However, Rosanna was pregnant at the time of the marriage taking place, so there were understandable hurt feelings about this going on. This alone would be a powder keg ready to explode under the right circumstances. We can also see a scene where there was some dirty name-calling where Rosanna was concerned by a drunk Ellison Hatfield. We can also see why equally drunk Talbot would rise to the occasion to defend his sister. The McCoy honor was now at stake, and it had to be defended. One word would lead to another word, and the next thing you know, the two men were getting physical, and knives and eventually a gun was used. While we are not for sure which or both reasons could have been behind the conflict, both have certainly been claimed by different sources. The third disputed claim. While we are sure that there may be other reasons behind this fight, such as the animosity and other events that happened before the conflict, we will discuss the mixing of the two types of moonshine. Again, going back to the Sun article, it is claimed that Joe Davis provided the moonshine for the Election Day festivities. Election whiskey, wine, beer, hams, turkeys, and other goods were used in order to buy votes in the Appalachians during that time. These goods were handed out to encourage people to vote for the candidate that was handing these things out. Today, this practice is illegal. But going back to the election of 1882, to keep the peace for the two feuding families, moonshine whiskey was handed out. This eventually ran out. But, being a celebration of Stafford winning his election by overwhelming majority, the two sides wanted more moonshine. According to the article, both apple and corn moonshine were offered, and this was an excuse behind the fight. Let's look at this a little closer. According to the scientific study done in 2017, conducted in several countries with both male and female participants, it seems that different types of alcohol does affect your mood. The study states that according to their data, 1/3 of all people who drink whiskey felt that their mood did change to more aggressive, restless, or tearful dispositions. Quote, one of the researchers behind the study, Professor Mark Bells, said, quote, people may rely on alcohol to help them feel a certain way. People might drink to feel more confident or relaxed, but they also risk the negative emotional responses too, unquote. One way to sum up the professor's remarks would be that whiskey is a form of liquid courage that can backfire. As far as the mixing of apple and corn moonshines go, there is a lot of mixed drinks and cocktails out there that do mix a flavored whiskey or other strong alcohol and a plain one, such as made from corn, potatoes, wheat, and rye. It is our opinion that if a person drinks one then the other, it really would not make a difference other than possibly making the person sick. The Election Day event would lean more to the amount of alcohol consumed by the group more than what kind of alcohol it was. Add to this that the two factions were already at a quiet war with each other at this point, and it just needed a match to set the whole thing aflame. There is an old saying in the mountains, if you thought it sober, you will do it drunk. And I think in the case of the fight between Talbot and Ellison, that there was already anger between the two men, and both just needed liquid courage to act upon it. While we will not discuss the actual fight between the Hatfields and McCoys on the election day of August 5th, 1882, we will let it be known that the way the fight is described in the Sun's articles is plausible, but we simply have no other sources that dispute it at this time. This may change, though, as more information becomes available. In next week's video, we will discuss the controversy over Ellison's death and the events of the arrest of the McCoy brothers. Thank you. Kentucky Tennessee Living would like to thank you for watching our video series on the myths and truths of the Hatfield and McCoy feud. Don't forget to hit that like button, as the more likes we receive, the more likely YouTube is to suggest our videos to other viewers. Also, to receive notice when we upload a new video, be sure to subscribe and click the bell notification button. Please be sure to double check that you are subscribed, as some of our viewers are finding that they are no longer subscribed to our channel. We thank you for continuing to support Kentucky Tennessee Living as we are discovering the mysteries in Appalachian history.